Ambassador Ngovi Kitau, who served as ambassador to Korea. That is between 2009 and 2014.
Correct.
That is under President Mwai Kibaki.
Correct.
You've lost a boss.
Yes, I have. And thank you very much, Victor, and the management of KBC for giving me this opportunity to share my experiences with President Mwai Kibaki.
Right.
Yes. President Mwai Kibaki, I would say, is one of the best presidents Africa has ever produced. He was very sharply focused, revolutionary, and very visionary.
Right.
I'll start by how I entered the civil service. I was the managing director of Marshall's East Africa.
Marshall's East Africa, yes.
Marshall's East Africa. And there was an Africa-India summit in New Delhi. And I was requested to attend that summit on a cost-sharing basis. And I did attend. What surprised me is that when I go to India, I met presidents from other African countries. I met President Thabo Mbeki from South Africa,
right.
President Museveni. But for Kenya, I was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Wetangula. And that kind of surprised me that Kibaki was willing to delegate and create space for others to excel and to show their capacity. So that is my first encounter with the Kibaki's management style. Yes.
You know, what you've said has been said by so many people that President Kibaki never got into anybody's space. Once he gave you the mandate to do your job, that was it.
Yes, that is correct. And in my case, when I was posted to the Republic of South Korea, I was the first Kenyan ambassador to that country. I was actually on my own. It's like he gave us executive powers to do our jobs. But he had designed one of the best performance contracts I've ever seen. I never knew that civil service had gone to that extent because I was from the private sector. But I found that he had designed a performance contract which was superior to what we had in the private sector. Yes.
His foreign policy, people would say, the way you said, that he is one of the best presidents that Africa ever produced.
Yes.
From your own experience, how were his foreign policy? You know, South Korea is a very close ally to Kenya, and you are the first ambassador, as you say, to bring that tie and to bridge that gap between Kenya and South Korea. His foreign policies, how were they back then?
At that time, Kibaki had introduced a different management style in the country. He was operating under what we call the National Economic and Social Council, which was guiding his decisions. And on the foreign policy, we were implementing what was known as the Look East policy. And the Look East policy was basically to look at emerging markets, newly industrialized markets, and see what we can gain from them, how we can interact with them, how we can partner with them, as opposed to focusing so much on the Western side. And when I go to Korea, my assignment was first to establish why Korea has developed so rapidly, taking into account that at one time, in around 1964, Korea was very poor. They borrowed money from us, and they were not able to pay a small amount like $10,000 for a period of 2 years.
Did you get that answer? As you settled in South Korea?
Yes, I did. And it is what Kibaki used to bring up Kenya. What the Koreans had done was to come up with a strategic development plan for the country. In our case, we call it Vision 2030. The Korean version of Vision 2030 was from 1962 to around 1996. So it took Korea that 4 years to move from an aid recipient to a donor.
Right.
And Kibaki wanted us to learn what is it they were doing we can do.
Absolutely.
And we were able to establish what we could do, and a lot of that was done.
And when you talk about Vision 2030, education, infrastructure, proper healthcare, industrialization, foreign policy, etc., those are some of the basic background and backbone that President Mwai Kibaki believed in.
Yes, those were, but I would like to isolate two. One was education.
Education.
And I will tell you where we are on that one. In the case of South Korea, the education policy was based on the industrialization policy. It was not education per se.
All right.
And what they did, depending on what was to be done in the industry, they meant education, as Kibaki did, free and compulsory at different stages.
Yes.
For example, in the early stages, they needed more people at primary level because the industry they were developing in those days was like the petrochemical industry, like you've seen how we are doing the air, the rigs we are doing, which was labor intensive.
Right.
So at that point, they meant primary education, free and compulsory. Then when it came to vocational skills, when now they were going into manufacturing, they made education free and compulsory. And as they progressed, they went to what we call the knowledge-based economy.
That is the same thing that happened in Kenya.
That's
free primary education that President Kibaki introduced, and then now we have a CBC.
Yes.
Right.
So education needs to be aligned to something.
Exactly.
So that we don't have producing people who don't have jobs, because that creates another social problem.
That is CBC, technically speaking. And when you look at the steps that we've taken so far, the foreign policy, for example, the ties between Kenya and South Korea, where are we, even after you left?
I would think that the relationship has actually matured, because one of the assignments President Kibaki gave me was to go and establish why has the relationship of 1964 not matured. And I found that the Korean culture was different from our culture. And nobody had taken time to understand how they operate. So in the case, because Kibaki wanted us to implement economic diplomacy, because the Cold War had ended, USSR had collapsed. So there was no point of going so much on the political side, because he didn't see any growth in that. He wanted us to do economic diplomacy. And in that area, I discovered that the Korean culture is different from our culture. Koreans do business through trust. At the same time, Koreans don't trust. So that became a problem.
That's tricky.
So we had to find our way. What is it we can do with the Koreans where they can trust us? And that was to bring on board some Koreans to work with us. And if you remember the National Economic and Social Council, we had a Korean on board, Professor Kun Mo-chong, who was able to guide us on issues of Korea. And from there, we were able to get a lot of scholarships, which Kibaki was very happy with. We were able to do the ongoing project at Konsa, the KAIST.
The Konsa City.
The Konsa City, both the urban planning and the education. And we were also able to train a lot of scientists up to PhD level on the nuclear energy.
All right.
Yes.
Ambassador, just hold on a bit, stay with me, because we still have much more to cover, because we cannot talk about President Kibaki, within 15-20 minutes, but we'll try and squeeze as much as possible. Kioria, you've had it. So Vision 2030 is more or less the same as the Korean kind of system, early childhood development, which Ambassador also said that was borrowed from South Korea. So we are making baby steps. We will be there someday, right?
Absolutely. And it's very interesting to see, the steps we're making towards achieving that Vision 20, that we would want to hear his opinion about the same and whether we are in a good place. But of course, also when we come back, probably also get to discuss the interest of Pyongyang, North Korea, and South Korea, and how Kenya reacted to some of these things. But still I have Wilson. And I'm looking at the year 1961.
Yes.
When President Kibaki is plucked from Makerere University, a newly married gentleman. The sacrifices he makes to join his country in planning for independence, even writing an independent constitution, and to solve the problems, particularly the economic plunder that the colonial government has done. It's a very rare sacrifice, particularly that we don't see from the current crop of politicians.
Kibaki was a peculiar man in so many ways, okay? He's actually one of the longest, if not the longest serving member of parliament, which he is, by the way, in the area, meaning that he got into politics at a very early age. And if only Kenyans would have given him power when he first sought it, you remember when that was in 1992. If we had believed in him, because he was not a political politician in terms of what we would call politics, because we love people who lie the best, we love people who love telling stories when they are looking for votes. Kibaki was such a gentleman that if he said it's doable, it's doable. If it's not doable, it's not doable. And so he was called so many names, and I wish that Kenyans believed in him. But today, only 10 years of his presidency defined this nation. And so having someone like Kibaki, moving forward, we can pick so much from him. Let us not even look at how political you are. Let us concentrate more on how agenda-oriented of a person you are. Because if we had gotten Kibaki to be president like 20, 30 years ago, then if we borrowed this the economic model from South Korea, then it means we could be somewhere near South Korea. What is South Korea known for? Look, it is all the things that Kibaki stood for. Industrialization, quality education, infrastructures, good manufacturing. And when you look at the things Kibaki was doing are not political, those are the things that he implemented. And so I wish that moving forward we shall be able to pick a Kibaki who is not a political but a more an economic oriented person. Yes. And
looking at pre-independence Kenya and a bit of post-independence, because the people who actually go to get Kibaki from Makerere, the late Tom Mboya, and Mzee Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, it appeared like merit mattered to a pre-independence Kenya than it does now. Because all we consider today is tribe, other than the capabilities of people. I think back then common sense was very common to so many people. Merit mattered, and they were able to pick brains. It did not matter from what tribe you came from. They picked brain because we were a young nation. We were just learning how to crawl, not even walk. And so they needed every other brain out there to come and serve this nation. And I don't know at what point we are ever going to go back there, because today it is even impossible for you to get into power without a godfather. This godfather has to speak the same language as you, either corruption, he has to speak the same language where you come from, And so I wish that we would be able, I don't know, they say the more things change, the more they remain the same. But in this country, the more things are changing, the more they are changing for us. I wish we could be able now to go for brains. We are in a place in this country that only brains and character can save us. And so we need to start even as voters looking for such kind of people. Because if we expect these godfathers who are at the helm of this country to pick these brains for us, who do not, you don't have a good name, whose son are you, where do you come from, who is your father? If able now to pick someone who can be able to help this nation, I think that is the way to go. Yes, we need to do that. Among the most recorded times of economic prosperity, of course, other than when he takes power as president, is when he's serving as Minister for Finance and Economic Planning. But then the political exigencies of the time have President Moi removing him from the ministry.
Yes.
And taking him to Home Affairs, still as Vice President, but this time at Home Affairs. And I've just been wondering, why would the president, Moi then, without faulting him, remove then a person who has already shown a track record in terms of delivering this Ministry of Finance to take them to Home Affairs?
In a nation, not even in a nation, in most cases, planning, failing to plan is planning to fail. And so this country was crushed economically, socially, when Moi was in power. Let's not get into details. He's not here to you know.
May his soul rest in peace.
May his soul rest in peace. And so Moi was not the kind of a leader I would say was a structured leader in terms of planning, in terms of facilitation. Moi is the guy who would wake up in the morning and just say, let's go to this place. And so when Kibaki came with strategy and planning, you know, when you're talking about planning, you have to rub shoulders the wrong way with people who are not planning. And so if you want results, you have to get rid of people who have been in that place doing nothing. And so he came with strategies and planning, and so many people around Moi felt this guy is a threat to our positions, and so he had to leave. You know, the most regretful thing about Kibaki is that he is the best president who only got to rule when he was a bit older. I wish we picked those brains. I wish our fathers and our mothers and our grandmothers picked those brains when he was still younger, when he still had the energy to run this country.
Why do you think we didn't pick those brains at that point when he was younger?
Moi was he was the biggest hindrance to this nation. Anything to do with planning was not Moi's thing. Yep.
All right. There's also the question, of course, we'll be showing pictures of the queues in Parliament right now as people continue to line up to view the body of the late President Mwai Kibaki. But looking at President Mwai Kibaki, obviously he fell out with President Moi, and he's removed as Vice President, then taken to the Ministry of Health. At some point when nobody expected, when the president has said cutting down Kanu is like trying to cut down a mogumo tree with a razor, how does he emancipate himself from being a pro-establishment to now positioning himself as opposition to the very same government, to the very same party that he had said is very difficult to cut down?
Kibaki's presidency was some sort of miracle. It was a miracle, by the way, in the making. We would have hoped that Moi would have picked Kibaki, and maybe Kibaki and Raila as his deputy. But the issue of whose son are you, again played in those politics, because they picked a greenhorn politician, or rather Moi picked a greenhorn politician who was President Uhuru, who didn't come with a wealth of experience, and so he was just positioning him for presidency someday. But again, look at what that did to our nation. It was a blessing in disguise, because supposing Uhuru got into power and missed out on a Kibaki presidency, the question therefore is, could we be where we are today? Could we credit the things could we have credited the things we credited Kibaki for 10 years when he was in power? That's a question for another day. But so when Moi betrayed this to Kibaki, in fact I say Moi is the one who betrayed Kibaki, but that betrayal was a blessing in disguise, because when Moi and Kibaki came together, that's when we created Kibaki. That's when Kibaki was born to be the leader he had always wanted to be in this country. Yes.
And before we hand it to Victor, when President Kibaki assumes power, like any other leader, like any other person, he had the opportunity. Obviously, you remember when President Moi takes power in 1978, the people who called him a passing cloud and stuff like that, obviously he had a way of dealing with them, true. Including moving them.
Yes.
President Kibaki had a golden opportunity to revisit, let me use that word, to revisit the ills visited upon him by probably President Moi and his allies. In fact, Kiraitu Murungi says, at some point they wanted to jail President Moi, but President Kibaki refused.
He refused.
Why?
Kibaki was a man of peace. He loved peace. He enjoyed his tranquility. You know, he had so much peace within himself that he gave that peace to the nation because it was so easy for him to do that. But he failed to do that because he knew the implications of doing that. And he just wanted to see a thriving nation. And sometimes I'm tempted to think, I think older presidents are good because they just think about a legacy. And so Kibaki, even look at him when he retired from power. He did not meddle with the running of nation even after he left power. He just wanted to enjoy his retirement at peace. And so we didn't even see these presidential candidates going looking for him. He just said, I'm told at one point he said, mimi nilifanya kazi yangu nikamaliza, nyinyi fanyeni kazi yenu, ni wakati wenu. And I wish moving forward we would get so many Kibakis because he was just interested with not political theatrics. Oh, he has jailed this one. He just wanted to see a thriving and a working nation, and that's what Kibaki gave us for his 10 years presidency.
And I remember sometime addressing the president and his deputy saying, hawa vijana wafanye kazi.
Waache mambo mingi wafanye kazi. We have lost one of the best presidents we are going to have, and he goes down in the books of our history as the father of so many things. Remember when Thika Highway was done? We could not believe it was Kenya. We will
talk about it.
All right.
We'll talk about it. Let's first take it to Victor. You know, Victor, picking up from when President Moi retires, I would want to understand probably from Balozi how Kenya's foreign policy changed, because one, you have a country that is reeling from a weak economy, a negative global image, and you have, you know, even donor confidence in the country is at very low and minimal. What does President Kibaki do to restore donor confidence and, of course, the standing of this country in the global world?
Ambassador, that question is raised to you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that question. I'll say that when Kibaki took over the leadership of this country, the economy was not in line with the expectations of the Kenyans. And without being critical, I think Kibaki came up with a very clear plan on how to transform the economy in terms of manufacturing, international trade, and employment. And I do remember that time we were given an assignment to try to understand, like in my case in Korea, how the foreign policy of South Korea relates to the trade policy.
Yes.
And I was very surprised to find out that the Korean foreign policy was actually the trade policy.
The trade policy.
It was the trade policy.
Yes.
Their job was to go out there and create market for the Koreans everywhere in the world. So they had segmented the market, which is something we also try to copy, where their focus was on advanced economies where they could produce products for those markets which are of high quality and good profits. Then the second category was large emerging markets like Brazil, South Africa, and then finally the resource-rich countries. Now, that was a problem for us when it came to relating with Korea because we could not fall in those categories.
Right.
But on our side, Kibaki said, we do have products. And one of them was coffee.
Coffee. In fact, when you talk about trade and coffee, you know, President Mwai Kibaki opened the market, the gates of, you know, exports.
Yeah.
And Kenya is a serious exporter when you talk about coffee. Our tea is one of the best, again, in the world. How was the Kenyan market expanding way back then when immediately President Mwai Kibaki took reins of power?
Yeah, let me talk about coffee. When Kibaki took over, our exports of coffee to South Korea, the value was like $1 million per annum, despite the fact that we had so much coffee.
Yes.
Then we embarked on a strategy to get Koreans to test Kenyan coffee and compare with others. And I remember the market entry strategy we used was, there was a big exhibition where the president of Korea was visiting. And we insisted that the president of Korea should test Kenyan coffee and the prime minister. And the moment they did that, the market opened. And Kibaki was very happy because in the following year, the value of our coffee exports to Korea jumped from 1 million to 6 million, and then finally to $25 million a year. And in honor of Kibaki, before I came back, I introduced many brands of Kenyan coffee in Korea, including Kiambu Coffee, Masai Coffee, Mount Kenya, Nairobi. The last branding I introduced Odaya Coffee through a supermarket chain called EMAT.
EMAT.
Yeah, that was in honor of Kibaki.
How is the consumption currently?
Sorry?
The introduction, the sets of coffee that you introduced. How is the market rate right now?
The Korean market keeps on rising.
How is it performing?
And as the end of last year, the Korean consumption of coffee has reached 100,000 tons, metric tons. Unfortunately, our production of coffee has dropped from 128,000 tons a year to 35.
All right. Okay, so your screen there, Kenyans are tripping in at the parliament buildings. And of course, today's number is slightly bigger than yesterday. And yes, so to speak, yesterday it's a few minutes to 8 in the AM, and the number keep on rising. Of course, being the last day, we would expect a lot of activity, Kenyans coming there in droves. There's a gentleman who said that he left Nyeri in the morning, or there to be precise, just to come and pay his last homage to the late President Mwai Kibaki. Today is going to be a very busy day at Parliament Building. So yes, it's open to the public. It's your chance to have that one moment that perhaps, you know, many people did not have a time to meet him face to face when he was still alive. But that is life. That is life. As Kiora said, that life is transient, and so we have to appreciate it. Kiora, as you pick it from there, let me ask this way. At some point, Kiraitu Murungi, who is now the governor, said that they were ready to pick charges against President Moi when Kibaki took over power. But it is President Kibaki who said, you know, it doesn't have to work like that. Perhaps if you can just shoot that question. How was President Mwai Kibaki when he even invited President Moi to State House 6 months down the line? And President Moi was a bit, you know, jittery. He wasn't so comfortable with it. But nonetheless, they still met.
And it's something probably Willie Kamau will comment on, because I think President Moi had the right, or was in his element by, you know, being jittery about it. Remember what happened during the swearing in of President Mwai Kibaki. The people who threw stones at him.
Yes.
Which then means when you see how President Kibaki treats President Moi after he has assumed power, it means then what happened at Uhuru Park to President Moi was not sanctioned by President Kibaki himself. Which means then loyalists of these politicians can actually set up a country in flames.
Very true.
Even without being sanctioned by...
Very true. Remember when Kibaki was being sworn in, he was actually recovering from a very nasty accident. And so he was, I would say he was not in the political meetings of what was being planned around the swearing in date, or rather before they got there. That means they were telling him, they would look for him, tell him, oh, the next president, this is what we have planned, and he would just give them his blessings. And so I feel Kibaki is the best man in terms of showing leadership skills, because leadership is not just about development, it's about even peace, it's about knowing the right thing to do. And Kibaki seems to understood these things, because what could have been the implication of jailing Moi? What would it have costed President Kibaki to invite Moi at State House and just have a cup of tea with him? Just, you know, what I want is just let's build the nation. And that was a very good gesture that again goes down in books of history. Remember how many years are those? We are discussing it today as a very good gesture. It will continue to be discussed, because he was a man full of peace and stability within himself. Remember, he was not even a bitter man. He had been called General Keguoya. You know what that means. Yeah, but he did not visit these things. He was saying, hey man, I do not have much time left. I am old. Let us fix this country. Let's do what we can do for the sake of this nation. Remember when Kibaki was taking over power, the country's economy was shattered. Nothing was working. No system was working. And within a period of 10 years, he had turned around the economy of this country. People were making money. Banks were hawking their services to the people. You would find Barclays, you know, all these big banks, they were pitching tents at Gekomba, you know, near, what do you call them, these bus stations.
Even OTC.
Just for people to come and just to sell their services. But why? Because he had created an economic boom of circulation of money that was so great that people stopped complaining. You know, when people are busy working, they are eating, they don't have time to complain, as opposed to previous president.
And you know, what surprises me about President Kibaki is the fact that he resisted overtures to borrow money from outside the country.
Yes.
And he relied so much on taxes being collected, the revenue being collected, but also a bit of borrowing from local banks.
Yes.
What makes me get surprised is the fact that even with the local borrowing and depending on revenue, he still did not overcrowd local borrowing to the sense that even the normal person, even that small business was still able to access credit from local banks.
If you look at his economic model, he was first empower people before taxing them. Because there is no way you can tax people you have not empowered. And look at his macroeconomic decisions. He waived taxation for anything, for any asset generating items for people. One, he created a communication, an infrastructure communication that enabled people to do business from whatever part of the world, of Kenya, by waiving taxation for mobile phones. And so mobile phones created a job like no other for the people who imported and brought in the mobile phones, the services these mobile phones were offering to Kenyans. And then you can look at one of the most amazing things he did. When Kibaki took over power, he waived taxes for bodabodas. Okay?
Yeah.
I think a bodaboda back then was costing the most expensive one was at, I think, 65,000. Today it's about 120, double the price after he has only 10 years gap. And so young people created jobs out of these bodabodas. And so these guys are making money. So where do they take the money? Banks like Equity Bank come in and they start growing exponentially.
So actually, Equity started as Equity Building Society.
Exactly.
Under Kibaki.
Yes.
And then finally becomes a bank.
Exactly. Why? Because the people down there were economically empowered by Kibaki so much that they started saving. And so when you save this money, what does the bank do? Hey, government, do you want money? Yes, we have money. So, and you know, the banks will always prefer to work with banks more than even giving you money. And so Kibaki understood the importance of empowering these people to save money in these banks, just like China and South Korea, what they do, by the way. These countries are built by savings. When people save a lot of money, there is so much circulation of money such that the bank borrows this money, puts it in investments, and these investments are money still that is circulating within the economy. And so everybody who was working in Kibaki's time had means of making money. So one of the things I remember Kibaki, we will always remember Kibaki, is that he did not tax people without empowering them first. He first empowered them to tax them, and that's why we saw an economic boom and growth in this country. If you look at his GDP growth, man, it's only the only time we were affected was between 2007 to 2008. That's when our scales of economy went down. But as far as growing the economy, Kibaki knew how to do it, and he grew the economy by not taxing people but lowering taxes for people.
All right. the Standard today talks about the bittersweet, the Raila Kibaki ties, and we'll talk about their ties. Yesterday, the papers had aptly captured the moment of 2002, a rising nation, a nation with hope. But there was a name OU between President Kibaki and his partners in the NAC coalition, Mwenge. Used to be called Mwenge.
Yes.
And the papers are trying to paint a situation where this was a very big moment for the Republic that President Mwai Kibaki squandered in terms of ensuring cohesion and political stability. Do you think so?
No, I don't think so. Kibaki was a man wise in so many ways. And remember, all these are politicians. He had seen what politics can do to a nation. And so Kibaki had to betray some things for the sake of this nation. And so today we look back and we are so thankful that he did not allow so much politics into his presidency. Because if so much politics played in his presidency, he would not have done whatever he did in terms of achieving and taking this country to the next level. And so I am happy he even did that, because it was avoiding taxes. Remember, Kibaki had served this country for so long, and he knew the characters and the persons of these people who were just trying to find their way into his leadership. And so I am happy it never happened, by the way.
Of course, we will talk about the friction that emanates from him not respecting that MOU inside his government. We'll talk about it in a bit. But Victor, it is important, you know, whenever a country is discussed in terms of its foreign policy, good neighborliness is one of them.
Yes.
And in terms of trade, because Kibaki really paid a lot of attention to issues of economy and trade, I'd want probably to know from Balozi, what was the volume of trade between Kenya and her neighbors before President Kibaki took over?
Ambassador?
Sorry, repeat that question.
How was the trade between Kenya and our neighbors during Moi's regime, and probably just to add, after Moi's regime, when President Kibaki took power?
Yeah, when Kibaki took over power, he brought in the enablers, the infrastructure, and that saw an exponential growth of our trade with our neighbors, and especially Uganda.
Yes.
Before, they were a little bit uneasy. There was dissonance because of the way the country was run. Now and then, there would be clashes here and there would be protests, and that delayed their cargo from the Mombasa port to Uganda and the countries beyond. And Kibaki made sure that whatever happened in the country, the trade between the countries, the trade between Uganda and South Sudan were not affected by disagreements in the country. So the volumes grew.
You know, when you talk about the growth, the issue of peaceful coexistence, peace resolution between countries, we have conflict resolutions rather, and, you know, etc., etc. During Moi's regime, it was a bit kind of unilateral, but when President Mwai Kibaki took over, it all changed. But still, he maintained some of the aspects that Moi carried along with him. But President Moi was somehow personally involved in the peacemaking processes. But Mwai Kibaki used proxies like ambassadors like you. How would you describe his leadership in terms of peace resolution approach?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because if you look at Kibaki's approach, where he was able and he allowed ambassadors and the ministers to get involved in conflict resolution, it worked better than when the former presidents were doing it themselves.
Yes.
And look at the case of His Excellency Stephen Kalonzo. It was a product of that approach by Kibaki.
The shuttle diplomacy.
Yeah.
Remember.
Which up to now,
yes,
even President Uhuru has been using Kalonzo for South Sudan and DRC. That is what was initiated by Kibaki. And it has worked better for us. Because I do remember 2 or 3 months ago, the DRC delegation was in Nairobi when they wanted to join the East Africa community. And they saw Kenya as the leader in the region. And they came to Kenya. I remember attending a dinner with them to see how best we can assist them to join the East Africa community. That is the framework initiated by President Kibaki. Yes.
Ambassador, let's not also forget that the power and the negotiations between South Sudan and Sudan was done here in Naivasha under leadership of President Mwai Kibaki.
Yes.
That tells a lot that he was a man, and in his foreign policy, one, he wanted a united kind of Africa. Neighborliness was quite paramount to him during his reign. And now South Sudan, even if you look at their flag, they have, it's more or less the same as Kenyan flag, even the colors. So how would you attribute that?
Yeah, as I said, Kibaki was for peace. Because he was an economist and he understood the essentials of trade. You will not be able to do business where there is no peace.
Right.
And that was key in his policy, that we have to unite and ensure there is peace within Kenya and in the region. And the other aspect of that was the initiation of the project of LAPSET. Where now it would be able to link the countries, our neighbors, and all the way to West Africa. I think that we should give credit to Kibaki for that commendable effort.
Ambassador, at what point did your phone ring while you're in South Korea? President calling?
Sorry?
Did your phone ever ring? President Mwai Kibaki calling?
I will tell you, and I'm being very honest with you, Kibaki has never called me.
But you are an ambassador in South Korea.
I represented the president, but Kibaki...
You would pick up his call, there was a direct line saying, Ambassador, something's happening, the president calling.
Kibaki's style of working was that you are on the ground, you are there to solve the emerging issues there, and if you are not able to, then you are the wrong person. Because he is sitting 15,000 kilometers away.
Yes.
You understand the policy. You know the framework. What's he calling you for?
What is he calling you for?
Yeah. That means you are unable to manage.
Yes.
And he had given us executive powers to perform. The only time I saw Kibaki get informed is like he was getting unhappy with the progress in the energy sector. Because Kibaki was switched on manufacturing.
Right.
And the cost of energy was slowing us down. And he got all the ambassadors and took them to Kitui, to the Moi place, to see the coal which is there. And he told us to go and look for investors so that we can harvest this coal and get cheaper energy.
A leader extraordinaire. His phone or your phone never rang during President Kibaki's tenure.
I don't think he had time for such things.
Oh my goodness, quite an interesting person. Jacob, a lot has been said about President Mwai Kibaki, and as you can see on the left, on your screen there, happenings at Parliament buildings. Today is a double line. Jacob.
Yeah, it looks like it will be a tough day for security officers keeping guard because the line is way too big today. It's not like yesterday, but you know the typical Kenyan style of using the very last day of making hay while the sun shines. And that is what exactly we're doing. Of course, you can see the exercise of viewing the body has started at the Parliament buildings. And therefore, if you still want to participate in the exercise, you can still run there. And of course, join fellow Kenyans. You saw, you know, the people Purity Musea was talking to this morning, exuding hope that they will be able to view the body, but most importantly, celebrating the life and times of President Mwai Kibaki, who served this nation for too long, and again 10 years as President of the Republic of Kenya in various capacities before becoming President, including being Vice President. And those are live pictures from Parliament, and that is what we'll be doing for the entire day today. By the way, there was supposed to be a sitting of the National Assembly today. I've not seen any gazette notice avoiding the same, so probably there will be a sitting that will allow for an adjournment today, to allow for an adjournment of the National Assembly, because it was supposed to be resuming today. and probably even get time to mourn President Kibaki. Yeah?
On Monday.
Yes.
Special sitting, that's at 2:30 p.m. Today at National Assembly main chambers.
Absolutely. That means then the National Assembly will also get an opportunity to mourn President Mwai Kibaki, who was in that chamber for so many years, representing Donholm constituency, the current Makadara constituency, and then Othaya from 1974. So clearly the National Assembly will have a moment to do that, but that's just it. We are live from Parliament buildings and including inside the chambers once that session begins. But let me hand it over back to you, Victor, to continue with Balozi as you talk about, Kibaki's foreign policy. But I'm still interested in the question of Victor. North Korea has had some bit of aggression towards South Korea. Balozi is saying never did President Mwai Kibaki call him, probably to guide him on how to respond as a country towards this aggression.
You had the question? The strife between South Korea and Korea.
South Korea and?
North Korea.
And North Korea, rather.
Yeah, I will not venture into that discussion because it's very sensitive. But what I would like to say is that the main difference between the two countries is just policy. The policy they had when during the Korean War from 1950 to 1953, the country was divided between America and Russia.
Yes.
And this is a very emotional topic, and I would like to request all Kenyans who go to South Korea to actually avoid discussions on South and North Korea.
All right.
Yeah, we have a young man in North Korea called Kim Jong-un, and he's served by his sister Kim Yo-jong. They are the kids of Kim Jong-il, and their grandfather is Kim Il-sung, and we just leave it like at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the Moi's style of handling foreign policy. Moi's style of approach was the formulation, the foreign policy formulation and implementation was somehow characterized as centralized. But when Kibaki took over, it was more of ad hoc. When you look at it, it was decentralized. It was being handled through foreign affairs ministries. That is a very big departure when you compare the two regimes.
Yes, it is. But I would like to make one correction that President Kibaki's style was not ad hoc. It was based on a carefully thought out strategy. And I do remember that question arising one time in an international forum where somebody called me an hour in a discussion, and I almost froze.
Right.
They asked me, what do you have to say about the slogan Vision 2030? And that shook me because it was never a slogan.
Right.
So Kibaki had a very clear framework on how to engage and how to transact. Yes, and that was the difference between the former regime and this regime. Yes.
So most of the, talk about the Minister of Foreign Affairs, they were more of given more powers. They were more empowered to handle international relations between the government, between two governments, so to speak.
Yes, they were given more powers, and for the first time we were able to relate with the Treasury.
Right.
Because before, you'll find that the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Foreign Affairs were doing things differently and separately. But during Kibaki's time, we worked together, and I can speak for my case where before, when, say, South Korea is visiting Kenya, South Korea, the embassy and say Korea Exim Bank would meet our treasury, and the Kenyan Foreign Affairs was not there. And during my time, I would travel all the way from South Korea to attend those meetings in treasury. So I feel that the Kibaki's approach was good in team building, and it enabled the country to be stronger at the international arena.
Perhaps your lowest moment while you're serving as an ambassador in South Korea, your lowest moment?
There were two. And these are things we don't like discussing in public. The first one was when there was a bid to move the UN headquarters from Nairobi.
Right.
That was really painful. And that's
which
the
President
time
Kibaki really fought for.
Yes.
The UNEP and UN headquarters.
To really talk to people in Nairobi, to talk to Kibaki, and Kibaki said, hold your ground and say no. The other moment was we had done a deal with Italy long time ago in Mombasa, at the time of Balala, where we support Italy to be the chair, and we are the vice chair of the UNWTO, the World Trade Tourist Organization.
Yes.
Now, when the time came, we met in Korea, and I remember I went with the Honorable Balala. He was the Minister of Tourism, and everything was fine. Then the next day, it was like 200 kilometers. I went back to Seoul and continued with my work. I got a phone call that things were not working. And I was told to go back. So I went, and then when I asked, I was told that Italy have decided to contest against us,
right,
despite the agreement. And then there was a feeling that we can't win, we should backtrack. But then I pointed out that we don't have the mandate. We just have to go ahead and bid. And then I talked to our friends from Africa and in Middle East. And the first person to support us was Iran. And they were able to support us, and we won the chairmanship. So those were the two moments when I felt that probably I shouldn't have been in Korea.
But nonetheless, you stayed and finished your term pretty well. It's 17 minutes past 8 a.m. Viewing the body still continuing at Parliament buildings. There you have it. And yes, if you have got a minute or two, it's open to the public. Make your way there. Today is the last day. At 5 p.m. the body will be taken back to Lee Funeral Home, and it will lie in wait tomorrow. And then on Friday, the next chapter will take place on Friday. The body will be taken to Nyayo National Stadium for interdenominational prayer ahead of the final burial rite on Saturday. The body will be flown by the military chopper to Nyeri. So more of the program will be communicated by the government as and when we get them. An interesting discussion here in studio. Jacob Curia?
Well, of course, I'm also joined by Mama Lina Jabi Kilimo. You, of course, understand one of the biggest legacies is that her work at the anti-FGM board, but then worked directly with President Mwai Kibaki. And it's also very important to understand, being part of his first cabinet after forming government, how it was like. But first of all, Mama Lina, karibu sana. You're welcome. You know, let's start by looking at days before the formation of the NAC government. First of all, you decide to vie on a NAC ticket when Rift Valley is Khan. What was happening?
Thank you very much. I vied on a DP ticket.
On a DP ticket.
It became NAC. You know, NAC was just an umbrella of many parties together, but I vied on a Democratic Party ticket.
Victor, a bit to talk to Balozi on the foreign or diplomacy of President Mwai Kibaki, of course, when it comes to his foreign policy, but of course a very interesting story on this other end with Mama Linda Jabi Kilimo. Victor?
It's quite interesting that, you know, God can pick you from where you never expected. Remember the story of David?
Yes.
Yes, David was being touted as just a shepherd. Mungu anamtafuta wanasema this gentleman huko malishoni ako na ng'ombe na mbuzi huko, but God said that is the person I want.
Preach on, brother.
And he came to be a king. All right. The same story to Mama Jabi Kilimo. She almost fainted. I can imagine. All right. Back with Ambassador here. Ambassador, you know, the president's approach in shuttle diplomacy, number one. Remember by the time Kenya was fighting the issue of ICC, President Mwai Kibaki he took somehow a low profile in that approach. He made different approaches. He used Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka then to rally different nations, to help Kenya to go through the process of ICC. It was a very tough moment for Kenya. But when you look at President Moi was somehow thick in the management of international relations and in management of foreign policy. How do you describe the two gentlemen?
Yeah, thank you very much, Victor. I think we need to avoid discussions of comparing people, but nonetheless, they were from different schools of thought. And let's just focus on Kibaki, because that is the essence of our discussion today.
Right.
Kibaki had structures in place and institutions in place on how to manage foreign policy. He didn't have to physically get involved in getting things done. For example, if you look at the African continent, Kibaki was able to get ambassadors, like an ambassador for East Africa Community, ambassador for COMESA, ambassador for African Union, so that things can be done professionally and on time. That was the fundamental difference. Yes.
And of course, the involvement of the foreign affairs ministries, and you said treasury as well.
The Foreign Affairs Ministry, they were empowered.
Empowered?
They were empowered, yes.
He really fought for the Security Council, for Kenya to be a member. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we have the UNGA, the UN General Assembly, where the heads of state meet, and the UN Security Council. The power is in the UN Security Council.
Right.
And it is so important for Kenya to be in there, because that enhances your value globally. And I'm happy to say that finally we are there. Kenya is one of the 10 non-permanent members of the UN Security Council.
Yes.
It took us time, but we are there. Credit to President Uhuru, to the Foreign Affairs, both the CS and the ambassadors, but we are there now. And because of that, we are able to engage many countries, because that is where implementation is done.
When you talk about President Mwai Kibaki, we talk about finance and economy. During his time, we saw a lot of doors opening. Kenya is at the center.
Yeah.
When you look at South Sudan, when you look at Uganda, Tanzania, most of these countries are landlocked. But the port of Mombasa was open for all these other countries during Kibaki's regime. Are we still enjoying that, good relationship with those countries? And how did Kenya's economy grow as a result of that?
Yeah. Again, these countries are not landlocked, they are land-linked. That's how they prefer to call themselves.
Land-linked?
Yeah, they are not landlocked, they are land-linked.
Okay.
And Kenya has put enablers in place to ensure that they are able to do their business, they are able to get their things on time. And this is why I earlier told you that Kenya was able, through Minister of Foreign Affairs, to assign ambassadors, not just at bilateral level, but also multilateral. The other thing which helped a lot during Kibaki's time was certain treaties which were very important to investors. And one of them is promotion and protection of investments.
Yes.
The other one is avoidance of double taxation.
Double taxation,
because you don't want to pay tax here, and then when you go back to Canada, you pay tax again.
Right.
And he was able to sort those out. The other concern for investors is non-commercial risks. Touch wood. Support is a coup. So what happened to investments? So Kenya has been very active in that area, because we are members of the World Bank Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, where your compensation would almost be within the month. Also, we are members of African Trade Insurance.
Right.
And we are also members of the International Center of Settlement of Investment Disputes. So these things, Kibaki made sure we remain very strong, so make it easier for people to work with us, for people to invest in Kenya.
And interesting. The new constitution was close to his heart. Yes. And when he took reins of power in 2002, he wanted that constitution to be delivered within 1 year, but we all know what happened in between then. Before I come back to that, because I want us to understand how the promulgation of the new constitution also spurred the economy of Kenya, number one, and two, how expanded the foreign policy and, you know, the relationship between Kenya and other states after the promulgation of the new constitution. But before then, let's go to Jacob Kiora. Let's hear from Mama GB and hear how things happened way back then. Jacob.
Thank you very much, Wycliffe, for catch a fantastic job there. And of course, talking to a very informed gentleman there, has been able to describe in a nutshell the legacy of President Mwai Kibaki, and at the same time paint our problems as they are in the current society. But Mama Lina, you were speaking about the legacy of President Kibaki in terms of solving the problems of Marakwet East.
Yes.
And now there was the question of you as minister and your working relationship with the president.
Yes, you also asked whether at some point I felt there was the boss or any disagreement. I must count myself lucky because I never saw him getting angry with me. Even when I voted against the constitution in 2005, of course I had to explain why I voted that way, because my constituents were against it, and so I had to follow, because I am their voice and their mouth in everything that they say. I didn't see him get annoyed with me, because later on he still appointed me as his assistant minister in the Nusumkate government later on. And I must say, I still enjoyed other facilities. I just want to you people to know that I feel that he was my network in government. Remember, I come to Nairobi, I don't know many people, I don't know left or right. It's like he's the one who connected me, and that's why I think I went and reported to him all the agendas that I had. Even voting no, I made sure that he knew it. And I think I was just lucky. I didn't see him get annoyed with me. He visited my constituency. I feel that I had his support, to which I am grateful up to now. And that's why I had said earlier, he is my destiny connector. Yeah, I am where I am today because of that platform that he gave me to serve in his government.
There's that low moment in his administration when you and several ministers of his cabinet are involved in a plane crash as you head towards Funyula.
Yeah.
Talk to us about, you know,
as we leave Funyula.
As we leave Funyula.
Yes.
Tell us about that day and how it was received in government.
No, you should be telling me how it was received in government, because I was involved in the accident. I wouldn't say how it was received on government, but I recall that we had either the military choppers and the police chopper to transport us. To me, it was my lowest moment, because I was the last one to be found, and unfortunately I was in the chopper with the dead when we were being brought, because I was the last one to be picked, and the rest had been taken because I was trapped under. I was trapped under near the wing, and people were passing over, and so someone had to come and cut the belt, because I was tired. I couldn't open myself. I was there with the late Wanjiro Kihoro. So then I was taken to a mission hospital. So by that time, everyone had been taken, and those who tell me they remember, they were saying that I was missing, but later on we were brought in later. I was among the last ones, in the chopper. But I'm grateful that we were all taken care of by the government later on. I'm sure definitely it was a sad moment for him. I'm just imagining what he would have felt, because we were several of us, and we had gone to celebrate Mudi Awori, Uncle Mudi. And to me, it was more personal to go and celebrate Uncle Mudi, because he was one of those who kept in touch with me during my campaigns to find out, how are you doing well? What are the challenges, knowing that I was in a very, very difficult area. Yeah, the people who really kept in touch with me, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and Uncle Mudi, as my campaign, and of course Kirwa. Kipruto Kirwa also from that area. So I could say those are just the network I knew, but as to network of government, I got to know through the president, Mwai Kibaki.
And this is not the only sad incident that happens under his first term. There's another, like Geoffrey Papai, is a minister who dies under President Kibaki's first, even his vice president. What was the mood in cabinet when, you're losing a colleague and another?
I think you couldn't read his body language. He was one person, you can't read his body language. He internalized most of the things, and you may not even get the answer to what you've talked about or requested, but you will see work being done. He will not tell you it will be done, but you will say your request, and he can say, okay, you're finished. But one thing that you would notice, if there was something he was thinking out, is it like his lips, as though he's mumbling his lips just like that, and maybe he was internalizing. But it was of course, I'm sure he went through so much, losing so many people, until at some point some of us from the Christian perspective were saying, and I raised it in the cabinet, is, should we be saying we are unbogable? God is here boggering us with all these deaths. Maybe we shouldn't be saying we are unbogable.
Victor, those are things you've never had before, have you?
Absolutely. And during that time when there was that plane accident, people said that President Mwai Kibaki's regime started on a wrong footing. But see where we are today. We are all here to talk all the goods about President Mwai Kibaki, and I think it's not too late to say sorry, Madam GB, for that accident. It's never too late. All right.
Definitely.
There is this question with me here. I still have Ambassador with me here. Ambassador, how did the promulgation of the new constitution make Kenya to be seen out there in the global map?
Thank you, Victor. It did that in two ways. Despite the fact that we had the Foreign Investments Act, the Foreign Affairs Act, we got the foreign affairs now covered in the Constitution.
Right.
And that made a difference globally because everybody felt protected. Secondly, the Constitution devolved power partially to the counties. That enabled counties to go into serious discussions with sister counties, sister cities, where you can have I remember working with two. I remember Kiambu and Laikipia requesting for assistance, and they could sign a sister agreement with another county or with another city. So it did help us a lot in doing our business, the foreign affairs.
You are sitting in South Korea, and Kenya is a member of different organizational bodies, globally speaking. How is Kenya seen? The moment you are in New York, you are in the United States there, you are in London, you are in South Korea, how is Kenya seen when the name is called?
Kenya is more than just a territorial destination because of, one, the historical aspects. Kenya has been a leader in this region for a very long time. And also, Kenya has been able to produce some of the best brains in the world. If you look at the people running key organizations, including NASA, you will find Kenyans in there. So Kenyans are held in very high esteem, and Kenyans are very, very respected, and Kenyans are seen as real leaders in Africa.
Real leaders in Africa. And you said that, President Mwai Kibaki is seen as one of the best presidents Africa.
President Kibaki was one of the best. He was very pragmatic. He was very strategic and very visionary.
Absolutely. The invasion of the multipartism. Kenya from one-party state, and now we have plenty of parties now. how was the foreign policy affected, or how was the foreign policy after the initiation of the multi-party democracy in Kenya?
You see, that is more of a political question, but let me just start by explaining that the status quo had been there for a very long time. And people kept on complaining, and the country remained political the way it was. But after the collapse of the USSR and the Cold War was over, so the main actors were able to allocate resources now to Africa on what they were calling democratization. And that is, despite all the fighting we did, that is one of the reasons why things changed in 1992. As I already explained, that when multi-party and the new constitution came into force, we were able now to engage more countries at different levels, as opposed to from the central government. So it was a very positive thing for Kenya.
Vision 2030 was President Kibaki's brainchild, and he was so passionate about seeing Kenya grow leaps and bounds, and being at par with other, countries that perceived to be, at some point later in the years, early in the years, that Kenya was at par with Singapore and South Korea. If you look at the trajectory of growth, where are we in terms of, in a scale of 100%?
I think we've done very well as a country, knowing our situation and the kind of challenges we face. Now we are in the middle income, in the lower middle income country, which was one of the goals of Vision 2030. And I believe that Uhuru has also done a lot, and with the incoming government, we should see if we can take that to the next level. Otherwise, the Vision 2030 is on course.
Is on course.
Is on course.
I asked you about your lowest moments when you were an ambassador. What were your highest moments that you'd look back and say, yes, that was it?
Well, one was when I opened a new embassy in Korea, because the Koreans didn't think, they thought of Africa as a death continent. And
that's so cruel.
Yeah, that's how it was perceived. And I remember I actually fought so much with until the media, everybody knew Kenya. I was in the papers every week, almost every day, until the other ambassadors couldn't complain. And I received a lot of awards, more than 20, for positioning Kenya, and especially with the media, because I was able to bring the media to Kenya to see for themselves what Kenya is. And that gave me the motivation and the inspiration to continue.
Amazing. Amazing. When you do good, you always get a good reward.
Thank you.
Kyria, what about you? How many trophies do you have for your good work?
Trophies?
Yes.
For what?
Ambassador got over 20 trophies.
I have several from my academic life, The others we'll talk about
after this. Okay.
When I'm done.
All right.
But at this other end, still have Mama Lina Jabi Kilimo. We're still talking about her experience and shaping the legacy of President Mwai Kibaki. And you were talking about when you went against the government position to oppose the 2005 referendum.
Yes.
Yet this is the man who had actually, who has been your connection in government.
Yes.
He probably doesn't even understand, because he fires you from cabinet after that.
He fired, yes, but our relationship never went sour.
Ah, okay.
Yes. Yeah, because I would still get communication from his ministers, those who remained inside. And I did explain why I voted no to the Constitution. I'm still grateful that at some point he would pass information to me like this and like that. He really advised me as a father. But you see, I also have my trophy. My trophy, and the highest moment, was when he ascended into the bill banning female genital mutilation in 2011 remember this was one of my agendas also, to ensure that we bring the conversation about the effects of female genital mutilation. That was I would call that the trophy I have, is the anti-female genital mutilation board in our country, which is there now. It may not be something I can see, but I know that the girls one day will be free from FGM, and I'm grateful that he ascended to that law.
Let me take you back as a participant in the 2002 moment. And I was asking the previous guest before you about the same, because the papers today refer to the 2002 moment. And also yesterday, the papers were aptly trying to say that the president squandered a moment in terms of uniting the republic, owing to the MOU that had been signed between the parties that had formed NAC, having served as his cabinet minister and being a political player then. Do you think there's a moment we lost after the failure to implement the MOU?
Yes, I feel that we lost when we did not implement the MOU, because then you can see that effect in 2007, when it was not a smooth ride for him to win that election as a president. It was very tough, and at some point we had to sit down and say, which party do you think is applicable there, so that we could get as many members of parliament as possible? Because in politics, it's about how many MPs you have, so that they can move your agenda on the floor of the House. So maybe not as a country, but as a person of the presidency who needed more members of parliament, I think he made that not implementing the MOU complicated, or made his second election to be very difficult.
Do you think the 2007-2008 post-poll violence, because out there, and particularly I've seen international media trying to do so, trying to say that that moment, that particular moment, blotted his legacy as president?
But how long is our memory? I mean, we all forgot later on and started enjoying the fruits of the Nusumkate government. And I think that must be his lowest moment, now that you have reminded me that one. It may not have been those other accidents and others. I think his lowest moment was when he saw Kenyans killing one another. Remember that they just, a madman was killed in my constituency, and he took it very seriously. So when he saw many Kenyans killing each other in the name of election, that actually could be, in my opinion, his lowest moment. In
the cooperative moment, because you also serve as assistant minister in the cooperative movement. And this is again at a time when, during the previous administration, when things like coffee and stuff like that and milk were not fetching good prices. What do you think is the legacy of President Kibaki in the cooperative movement, of course, as well as yours?
Revival of the cooperative movement, because before then it had gone really down, and so making it a ministry, a standalone ministry, gave us the opportunity to just focus on the cooperative movement. At some point, people wanted to privatize KCC and all that, but he held on to it, that it should not be privatized, so that it can still be owned by the cooperators themselves. We also formed women cooperatives and SACCOs, savings and cooperative societies, really came up. I believe that with the leadership of the then minister, the late Joseph Nyaga. And by the way, something that you know the way he merged us, that if this was ODM and then his wing, if the minister came from a Raila wing, then the deputy came from his wing, and like that, and like that. I think he was setting us on a path of unity as a country, and cohesiveness, accepting one another, because you had to work together without imagining, saying this is from which politics is this. You had to deliver as a ministry.
I want us to take a breather. When we come back, we'll talk about the 2010 Constitution. And as part of his cabinet again, you have taken a collective decision to support and the 2010 Constitution.
Yes.
First of all, you tell us why you opposed the 2005 referendum and why you support the 2010. But still, there are cabinet ministers who oppose, but this time he fires none. We'll talk about it when we come back. So we take a small breather. We'll be back. Don't go too far.
Promise me to take good care of my sister.
You can count on me.
Can't bring myself to accept that my only son and my daughter are going to get married. I can't do it.
I'll do my best to get the company back on its feet. Please calm down. Give me a bit more time.
Your best choice is to transfer the ownership of Shufeng to me.
What?
There's no way! I won't accept it! I won't accept it!
Let's put the past behind us. Just come back to me.
Hit him again. Don't expect me to stand by and do nothing. I'll report you to the authorities and I'll take him away.
No.
I think Julieta will kill herself.
What? If we get thrown out of this house, you're going to pay.
Are you selling your son to me?
Yes.
I never thought that you'd stoop so low as to sell your son.
Don't you realize that he's only telling you what you want to hear? And while he chooses to live like a king, you have to struggle and keep your head down. Daughters who are perfect don't tell lies nor hide bad things that happen to them.
Tell me the truth, Paulina.
I'm gonna burn your legacy.
Amy Boy Smith Jr. stepping up to Contra. What the hell? Who is that? There's been a hell of a super kick. It's Pillman. It's Pillman Jr.
Heart Foundation.
Weighing in this evening at 190 pounds from Atlanta.
I know Kinanzu is a very inconvincible person.
Okay, Kamene, today have it your way. I am not going to even correct you. I can't today, can't.
I mean, wait. You guys still get some beating from your parents, as big as some of you are.
You just know I will leave my mother's house when I am 33 years.
That is the way to go, Kamene. Adulting is not the way we thought. See everything the way we thought. See rahisi.
Angalia jiba yako.
Tukate maji.
Gonna burn your legacy. Amy Boy Smith Jr. stepping up to Contra. What the hell? Who is it? There's been a hell of a super kick. It's Pillman. It's Pillman Jr.
Heart Foundation.
Weighing in this evening at 190 pounds, from Atlanta.
In the suite, by and by, we shall meet on the beautiful show. There's a dedication to President Mwai Kibaki. May he rest in peace. And we continue to celebrate, because at 90 years, all we can do is to celebrate the life of this man who dedicated his entire life to the service of this country from a very young age. And in studio, we still have Mamalina Jabiki and Balozi on the other end with Victor. And we continue to, talk about the legacy of the president. Mamalina Jabiki has quite big insights about her relationship with the president, and we'll be getting to some of them later. But this moment of rebirthing this country through a new constitution, you oppose the Bomas draft, that one of the 2005, and then you support the 2010 constitution. What were the differences? Why did you first of all oppose this one, and then you're supporting the one in 2010?
I didn't support either the 2010.
Even the 2010 you opposed?
Yes, because I had wanted to be made a county with my warring neighbor, the Tiati people.
Okay.
I had really felt that for us to live at peace, which we had experienced in 10 years, we needed to be sitting together and talking our issues. So I kept on saying, could you make Marakwet East and Tiati, which is Baringo East, make us a county. Why? Because also we felt at that particular time during the regime, the Marakwet people were marginalized by their brothers, the Kayos. So I felt that we were still going to be subservient to the Kayos, just like the way you feel the Tiati people are subservient to the Tugens in Baringo. So you're bringing a marginalized community, underdeveloped, to others who are developed and making them a county. The other one will still feel we are not at par. And we felt that Marakwet and the Kayos were not cohesive enough to form to live as a county. You will find that before that time, Marakwet people would change their names to sound like Keyo so that they could access opportunities. As we don't have like Kipkemboi, for example. but the Kayos would have Kipkemboi. The Marakwet will have Kipkemoi. Instead of Kemboi, we have Kemoi. So I opposed it. I said, why can't we just be put with the Pokots so that we stop killing each other, because we will be sitting on the same table, sharing our progress together, because we needed to move to where the others are. So that is what happened. But anyway, it was not as aggressive as in the 2005, because in 2005, what broke my neck was when I met the people and told them, let us vote for the government. We have benefited ABCD. But there is something in that which opposed, which made it very difficult for me now to say no again, that the clause that says girls to be given land by their parents. And I remember the old man, as we went out and coming and talking to me, the old man came and said, okay, you asked us to give you a vote as a woman. First of all, you are even a child, uncircumcised. We swallowed all that and gave you the seat. Now you want our land. You want land for the girls. I said, okay. Because land is never allocated to the ladies in my community. And that is what really made the people say no, because they said now I was asking for too much. We have forgotten everything else, gone out of our way to vote for you in. And then you go and reach there, now you want to come and take the land. So I said, all right, and that was the reason. And I feel that's the reason why the president had to understand the background where I came from, that despite voting no, he still embraced me. Not to be, I just felt that if he retained me in his cabinet, others would have said, why are you retaining her and removing the rest? So it's that issue of when a tree falls, even other shrubs along fell.
Must suffer.
Yes.
So, Deputy President William Ruto, then as minister, leads the Back in the No campaigns, and the government already is in green, campaigning for the constitution. But still, the president is tolerant enough that there are members of his cabinet who are campaigning against the constitution and doesn't fire them.
Yeah. He was, I'm telling you, he was so tolerant. I think he just, it's like he would look behind you to see the society you come from, or how you've been socialized. So he would just embrace people as they are. He took people at a personal level without really, or he considered others siasa too. Yeah.
Tell us about this thing of the father you never had in Kibaki.
Yes, he is the father I never had, because as I said, I came, and not only him, I must say that him as a family with the late Mama Lucy embraced me as one of their own. And I felt that love when they visited me in my constituency. They both came, and they came to lay a foundation stone for a Tot Health Center to have a 72 bed capacity. And one of the things I could know is at times Mama Lucy would be sent to places, and if she's not able to go, then I would either go or Esther Murugi. This is something that I'm so grateful that we enjoyed the trust of Mama Lucy to go and represent her when First Ladies were meeting. I remember one of the biggest one was I think was it in West Africa? I think it was in Abuja. First Ladies of Africa were meeting, and so Esther was not able to go, so I went on her behalf. And going to get briefs from her, she told me, Jebi, she called me Jebi. Jebi, you go and you enjoy all the facilities for a first lady. So you would go and you have all these people guarding you, you're in a presidential suit and all that, and you're just doing because Mama Lucia said you are going to represent her in that. And the fact that he would listen to the story I had about Marakwet when I talked about the Embobut forest, and he allowed me to go and get a census of the people in the Embobut forest. To me, I felt he was the father I never had, because everybody knows, I ran away from the cat, from the knife, and that's why I don't like female genital mutilation. And I feel bad when other girls are still running. My father wanted me to undergo the cut. He meant well, because that was the culture that you're taught how to behave when you grow up and all that. But what he did not know were the complications that come after you are being cut. And to me, I saw my destiny would be cut with that knife, because after you're cut, people, even if your parents don't want you to get married, there is a way that you dress and people know that this one has undergone the cut, this one has not undergone. And as you walk the way, you will be eloped. So even if your parents would want you to continue studying after the cut, the chances of you surviving were slim, because men will know, this one is ready to be a wife, because the cut was a rite of passage from childhood to adulthood. So these are my dream was, I wanted to escape all those and get educated to this life where my teacher talked about women in a place called Nairobi driving cars, that there's this plane which goes to London and only educated go there. So I had my vision, and FGM was like in impediment. And my father wants to fulfill all his duties as a father as required by the community. So I really felt that the relationship was antagonistic between me and my father. Then you come here and you find somebody who believes in you. You are feeling you are naive, but he's not seeing your naivety. You're in cabinet. You don't know how to contribute to the debate, but he will point to you and say, na wewe, epu sema wewe unafikiria nini hapa. So you see, giving you an opportunity to express yourself. And so that is why I say he's the father that I never had. Yeah, believing that I have something to say.
Quite interesting.
Yeah.
Are there times, if you're free to speak about it, are there times you had to see him without an appointment?
Yes. Well, I've gone to State House 3 times without an appointment. Yes. When I'm so annoyed and I feel, now whom do I tell? He's the person I knew. And he's the person who knows me.
And he will let you in?
Yeah. Ipu was the controller of State House. And I would go and you will be allowed in. Because now they will hear there's somebody at the gate and all that. Yeah. I've heard. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've heard twice and I got good answers. At one point I went, I was so annoyed. As I told you, he was a man of few words.
Yes.
I'm there, fire, I'm breathing fire. I feel this. Then he just stood from where he was, picked my hand and walked me out. To me, that was soothing.
But had he solved your problem? By the time he's...
I told you, he doesn't tell you the answers. You see the results. And the results were that he created the Ministry of Immigration. Yeah.
Wow.
After that, of me breathing fire and holding my hand to get out, I was made a full Minister of Immigration. He created the Minister of Immigration.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Victor, this man who will not give you an answer the way you want it, but once he holds your hand, you're sure you have gotten a response either way.
you know, Wazira just painted that picture, and the way she was artistically, she painted a picture in my head, the way she was breathing fire, and Mzee was just looking at her. Said, okay, sasa huyu wacha nimteleke huko ije kidogo.
And Mzee was limping a bit.
Yeah.
So you can imagine
slowly, know. So here she is, her hands are held. You don't know, tunaenda wapi? But anyway, that was him. I will ask you a question, because probably you can answer it when you come back. The issue of 2/3 gender rule, it's quite emotive, it's quite elusive. It goes to the floor of Parliament, but each and every time, there's a reading, there's a motion about that, it doesn't see the light of the day. What's your take on that? Probably you can handle that later on when you come back. But still with Waziri here. Waziri, at some point in 2011, President Mwai Kibaki, when you had a function in Ukambani, he ordered all the envoys to make sure that the foreign policy was in tandem with the new constitution. It was so close to his heart, right?
Yep.
Did you achieve it as envoys?
Repeat that question.
The president was quite categorical in terms of having the new constitution and the foreign policy, the trade.
Yes.
And he wanted all the envoys to make sure that the foreign policy in terms of economy and trade were side by side with the foreign policy and the Kenyan constitution. Did you achieve this as foreign envoys?
Yes, Victor, we did. We were able to align the foreign policy with the trade policy. And that is why we were able to do the volumes we did. It's true that if you look at our trade balance today,
yes,
maybe it's about $24 billion, and imports are 18 billion, and exports are about 6 billion. It's quite a gap, but it was worse than that. It was a lot of effort to push it to where it is today. And that was because the policies were aligned and the constitution was giving very clear guidelines on how to proceed.
And he was quite categorical, and he would monitor the growth and the progress?
I told you President Kibaki was on economic policy, economic diplomacy,
yes,
and he had established very clear targets on what you need to achieve. Yes.
Kenyan troops are still in Somalia from 2011, and President Kibaki, it all happened during his reign. Probably as an envoy, when you sat in your office and you're trying to see the whole scenario, what would you read from that?
Let me state two things before I answer that question. One, Somalia is a neighbor. They are our neighbors. We are brothers. We have families on both sides of the border, and we are one people. Secondly, there is the issue of the disputes and the dispute. And I can assure you that whatever is being disputed is part of Kenya's exclusive economic zone, historically, geographically, and under international law. And any president of Kenya has a duty to safeguard the sovereignty of this country. But now, let's come to your question. We all knew there was a problem in Somalia, but we didn't know how big it was.
Right.
So President Kibaki appointed Major General James Mwanzia Mulinge as the ambassador to Somalia. And I believe the ambassador must have given his report on the situation in Somalia.
Yes.
And it's possible it came out clearly that the global community and even us were not appreciating how bad that problem was. So President Kibaki called all the ambassadors to Nairobi.
Right, including you.
Yes. And he put us in the presidential jet. All of us. He gave us 2. And we were all taken to Kaguma refugee camp to see the problem for ourselves. And I saw ambassadors cry. It's the first time we saw breathing skeletons. People had walked like 3 months just to reach to Kaguma. And when we came back, Kibaki told us he wants us to go out there and preach that there is a problem in Somalia and it needs to be addressed. And that is how the situation was arrested. So Kibaki was quite pragmatic and very prudent in his approach to the situation in Somalia. Okay, there are issues about AMISOM that as a neighbor we should not send military there, but I think the situation which I saw on the ground myself,
yes,
we had to. It was very important that an intervention was put in place.
An intervention was put in place.
Yeah, and Kibaki did that.
Yes,
yeah.
And to this end, we can easily see stability in Somalia, and trade is going on, and Kenya is enjoying. And in fact, even the dignitaries from Somalia can easily come, fly in and out of Kenya, have a discussion with President Kenyatta, and go back. There is that now friendliness.
There's that friendliness,
right.
And the Somalis appreciate that. That's why they have been using Nairobi. When there are disagreements, they come here to their big brother to table the issues, and they are always resolved.
So generally, Kenya meant well then?
Sorry?
Generally, Kenya meant well?
Yeah, Kenya meant well, and Kenya still means well. Yes.
You know, at some point, President Mwai Kibaki called on citizens who hold dual citizenship to continue remitting, continue building the nation, remitting more finances, investing in the country. And he said that at the end of the day, when you have dual citizenship, then you as envoys on those different countries, please talk to those people and you know what? Remit back to that country. What was that all about?
Yeah, you are aware that the remittances have been very good.
Yes.
As a consequence of that. And the Constitution allows dual citizenship.
Yes.
So it was a very good initiative and has worked very well. Yes.
And even up to this particular point, when you look at the figures, the remittance is still doing pretty well, and Kenyans in the diaspora are also appreciating what it is all about.
Yeah, I think the remittance is one of the biggest sector of our economy.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. It's a few minutes to 10, and if you can take a look at your screens, of course, Kenyans are still, making their way to Parliament buildings. It's the third and the last day where President Mwai Kibaki's body is lying in state at Parliament until 5 p.m. And today is pretty a busy day as compared to the last 2 days, so to say, being the last day, and that will be it. So we expect a lot of nothing much, as the rest will be handled by the relevant committee chaired by the Interior Ministry and the National Government Funeral Steering Committee, and we'll be getting more information later in the day or probably tomorrow on how things will be come on Friday and Saturday. But just to mention that Parliament will have a special sitting today in the afternoon at 2:30. There was a special gazette which was put out there by the Speaker, Justin Muturi, and on Friday will be a national holiday. Friday will be a national holiday. So if you're within Nairobi or even able to travel, you still have some hours to go. You still have some hours to go and talk on that. Now, talk of economic diplomacy, Ambassador, and the President urged almost all the envoys to ensure that they give attention to that pillar.
Yes.
And because being a student of economics, he understood pretty well, and he pushed all the ambassadors to speak and the envoys to ensure that wherever you are, the economic diplomacy was well taken care of, and he wanted you to steer that to the next level.
Yeah, and there was a reason for that. See, if as a country we are not able to attract investments, and there's a limit as to how much we can do internally. If there are no investments, then there will be no economic growth. And if there is no economic growth, there will be no employment.
Yes.
So that was basically where he was coming from, and we had worked day and night. I do remember when we managed to sign the treaties to facilitate investments like the avoidance of double taxation,
yes,
and also promotion and protection of investments. One of the large Korean companies called POSCO, the chairman of that company was able to charter a plane, because there was no flights between Kenya and Korea, to Nairobi, to talk about starting a steel plant. And I do remember being called by the then head of civil service, Francis Mudaura, and the PS in industrialization, I think it was engineer Dr. Kibicho.
Yes.
They called me and we went for a meeting, and they told me the president is very keen on this project. Can you confirm to us that it can be done? And I told them it can be done. And I told them we will start by establishing a direct flight between Korea and Kenya. And I went to see the chairman of Korean Air. His name is late. He died last year. He was called Cho Yang-ho. And we discussed, and he agreed we'll start a direct flight. And that direct flight the outcome of that was that the tourists or people from Korea to Kenya, the number increased from 4,000 to 10,000.
Right.
And Kibaki was very happy with that. Yes.
And that was the whole essence of economic diplomacy.
Yes.
Do you miss South Korea?
I'm a Kenyan, you see. I have no other place to go, but there are things we do with Korea up to today. Yes.
Wow.
I am not going anywhere.
You're not going anywhere?
Yeah.
Kenya is home.
I mean, if we all go, then we'll build the country.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
I mean, the experience we have gained outside is what we need to push our country forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Waziri, back to you. The issue of two-thirds gender rule. I mean, it's a hard nut to crack for, legislators in Parliament. Maybe as you curious, you take it up. Probably Waziri can handle that. Why is it quite elusive?
Go ahead, Waziri.
Yeah, the issue of